So you now get to fulfill for adults that want to create their calling. One guy says he wants to get it tattooed on his body.
That's cool.
Isn't that what
So
Matt did?
yeah, but
Yeah.
that was before you made it, man. This guy wants to see something from you, edit it, and be like, "This is now a piece of Evan is on my body, tattooed in ink."
His name isn't Darren, is it?
No, that's Darren is Cade's dad. That's Cade's parents want Cade's piece.
No, and I work with who's always wanted to commission me for a tattoo.
Oh, really? No, his name is Fee. Yes, you heard that right. Phi Fee. I've worked with him for a while, but he's excited to go through it. Matt, were you able to share this in our group?
I'm doing that right now.
Heck yeah! Those that are coming in, welcome. We're back after a decently long break. Evan had some cross-galactic things to take care of. He was a notary for two of these, conflicting galactic orders. So they finally came to terms thanks to Evan. He notarized it. Matt was gone for a little bit. I believe he was saving a group of whales that got off track. I think it was south of it was like South Africa, just like South Africa, Madagascar area.
Really, really important stuff. Yeah, I was actually clubbing seals.
What? Okay, it's not where we want to start, but okay. Welcome. We're back though, and we're going to be talking about our children's book. We're going to be talking about we're going from that to talking about our children's book today. We are going to be talking about the adventures of Becc the Brave and Ceith the Curious. Ceith spelled with a C, so we have two alliterations. We'll talk about how this came to be. Matt, you might want to ask me questions because it's on our side there. We'll talk a little bit about where the origin novel is, where the comics are. But if you're joining us, say hello. Tell us where you're at. Tell us what path you're walking right now. Are you walking a builder path? Are you here and you're wanting to create something, build something, leave a legacy? Are you walking an explorer path right now and you're just you're filled with wonder and exploration and adventure and trying new things? Or are you the defender path? You really love the simplicity of life and you're preserving the things that you have, right? There is no wrong path. And we're going to walk multiple paths in our life. Which one are you walking right now? It's the question that we ask kids. Kids can answer this. So if kids can answer this, you can answer it. Matt, just put us, we're back, baby. We're back, Casey. And look at that. Casey's name pops up now. It's not like he doesn't have to say his
What?
Wow. What did you
What happened?
I don't know. I think it's because it's also going on my personal profile because Darren. Oh, Defender Path. Darren, thanks for joining us. We talk about your nephew, I think, today, Becc the Brave. That's enough about me. Everyone else, introduce yourself. Matt, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's good to be back. I missed these.
Good to have you back. I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to come back to you because you have bigger news. So I'll lead up to you. What's up, Evan?
Yeah. It's been a rough couple of weeks. I'm all right. I'm hanging in there. Thanks.
We all missed you, Evan. We all missed you. Matt, Evan and I actually got on a good call this Wednesday when you couldn't be with us because apparently you had better things to do. And we talked about
causation, who knows?
We talked about really cool lore for the world and like small tweaks we can make for more like internal struggles. If we get some time today, we'll chat about it. But you missed Wednesday because you were picking something up and your name changed today.
Yeah.
It is no longer a character from the novel that you are finished with Rough Draft now. It's your own name. And it says that you're almost married. Everyone, let's give a big old congratulations to Matt for almost being married.
It's been a tough run, but we're doing it. 1 week from today.
And guess who's going to be there?
Guess who
Not
my
me.
MC is?
I was going to say Evan as a joke. Once we get real close, we'll all get married again, and then we'll invite all of us to the weddings when we're big and famous from this. Dude,
Not
congratulations.
In love with that idea.
Well, you're going to have to, so figure it out, Evan. Congrats. Nerves, last second jitters, cold feet. Let's hope that Bella's not here when I asked that question.
None of those things. No, I feel good. I actually wrote my vows on the plane this morning. And so that it was a big step in, like, I've got it all worked out. I know what I'm going to say. I know what I'm going to say in my speech. I've got my MC figured out. That was hanging over me, but it finally locked him down.
What are you doing for an MC?
I got this tall friend that loves being laughed at. And if people are laughing at him, they're usually having a good time. So we're going to give him the mic at times and let him go.
Dude, the fun thing is it's going to be from the cuff. You're just going to be like, hey, tell these people that they got to go to this next. And I'm just going to have to, he's talking about me. Super excited to do this. Also nervous. So you just did your vows. Let's hear them.
Yeah. I think Bella is tuning in. She's going to have to wait. I would for you guys. But, since she's here, we're going to have to wait.
My man, super, super, super excited for you. Casey says, welcome to the Almost Club. Welcome to Almost the Club is what he said.
Thank you, Casey. Stick to pictures.
Know your values, man. If you're tuning in and if you have questions for us on the Kickstarter, on the world, on where we've been, on where we're going, on Dillon's work in schools, on Matt's work on the novel, Evan's work. Evan now has a illustration team. We have an illustration team at Unfound Adventure. So if you have any questions of what we're growing, you're curious, you want to grow something yourself, feel free to ask us. We will answer every question. But what I've realized, instead of us like waiting for questions, we'll probably ask each other questions. Just us shoot the breeze. Dillon's not going to swear. Let's go from Evan. How you feeling? Comic 3's done, right? Like for anyone out there, Comic 3 is being sent out today and early next week. So you should be getting Training Grounds and any other books you ordered from the Kickstarter, other than the novel, which we're going to come to in a second. You should be getting those comics probably within the next week or two. How you feeling? We got a heart from that. How you feeling, Evan, from the finalization of book 3?
Good. I like how book 3 turned out. Each time they're getting better. Each time I'm getting better at making them and sitting with them and drawing these characters again. And I like that this one gave me an opportunity to kind of have them grow a little bit. Like, I know not a whole lot of time has passed, but Artie desperately needs a haircut, and I liked kind of playing with that a little bit. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
How much time do you think you'd save per comic giving Artie like a buzz, let's say?
Like 30%.
Hey, we will not change that. The thing I really like about it, anyone that's going to get the book, you're going to realize, and this is something that One Piece does very well, is they're not always wearing the same outfits, right? I feel like so many times when I like watch Pokemon or when I read Pokemon, it's Red or Ash wearing the exact same thing every time. Evan, I think one of the things you do really well is like weave in different articles of clothing. Is that something you're thinking of as you're drawing this, or is it just like you'd wrap? Like, are you doing it for the reader, or are you're like, I don't want to keep drawing the same thing?
No, it'd be really easy to keep drawing the same thing. The reason why you don't see that so much in animation is because you change clothes, you got to know how to animate those clothes, and unless they're just a different color, that feels like a bit of a cop-out. No, I think about it. I mean, I think about the fact that Artie probably doesn't have a change of clothes, and so he's probably just he's the only one whose outfit doesn't change, at least hasn't yet. And so there's that, because he left with Joan and James on the fly from their house. It's not like they stopped at his house and grabbed him a go bag. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm thinking about. I also take that as kind of a pet peeve when the characters never, ever, ever, ever wear a different outfit, like a uniform. But it's also potentially a challenge depending on how the characters are designed. Like, a lot of times the outfit makes the recognizability of the character. Mm-hmm. Like, imagine Bash from Trigun without his red coat. I mean, he's got very recognizable hair. Maybe that's not a good example, but it's Doug without his green vest. There's plenty of examples out there where you take away the clothing and a big mark of their recognizability is gone. So that's a little bit of a balance, I guess.
Quick ego check, because he already said Defender James is here. When you said Doug without his green vest, you are talking about Doug Funny, not my father.
I am talking about Doug Funny. Does your father wear a green vest?
He would probably think, just because he heard his name, he'd be like, I think I do remember wearing that green vest he's talking about. It's funny that because Artie probably left on the fly and with flies. So if you want to know why Artie probably wears the same thing, yes, it's because he left so abruptly. You can also get to know Artie and a little bit more of his background by reading a short story that Matt wrote called Of Mice and Boys, which is free on our website right now, www.unfoundadventures.com. You can go to stories. You can read Of Mice and Boys for free for a limited time only. And what we're doing in that story is seeing everything that Artie was doing for book one. So when Joan is going to school and learning all these things and leaving school, Artie's doing something different that day. So we get to see what his day is like, and it's much more different than Joan's.
It is. You see him in the comic in a couple places. You see him on the 10-ton riding to school, and then you see him obviously in the alley, and that's where him and Joan sync up. But yeah, there's a lot of divergence from just Artie is not the top pupil in class like Joan is. On exam day, you'll have to see what happens.
It's also not cool. And it's funny because I'm storyboarding book 8 for anyone knows that. We're on books 15. I'm storyboarding 8. So we have books still to come. And I'm now, thanks to you, Matt, and thanks to us being like this, it's a collaboration, right? Taking something from your story and adding it to my storyboards. I'm super excited. I did not know that, actually, Casey. Thank you so much. And again, Dad, he's not talking about you. Another great question as we go through, and then I'm going to shift over to Matt. Casey is curious about the illustration team. If there was a hypothetical world where he was on the team, would he be the most handsome? No. Let's go to the novel now. Matt, you have finished the rough draft like ahead of schedule too, which is wild. Congratulations.
Yeah, I would say that for sure.
How do you
Evan and I both hit all of our deadlines always.
Oh, totally. Every
100%.
time.
I had an apology to Evan on Wednesday. I'm like, Evan, I owe you an apology, man. I want to hit these deadlines. I'm letting you. Everyone wants to like see this comic is what I'm kind of saying, but really it's like I want to see it. And it's like Evan takes it to the finish line, and I remember asking you, and I'm like, all right, Matt, when do we think the novel's going to be done? You're like, probably end of May. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But I do get it. And the biggest lesson that I've learned in this process is I don't want to rush creative flow. Like I want this to be enjoyable for us. So real quick, if anyone's wondering, what's Evan drawing? It looks like it's going to be a scene. This is going to be from the book, right? Because this
that's the idea. So I cheated a little bit this week. I started this about maybe 40 minutes before our call. I cheated.
Ow!
And what was I saying? Okay, so there is a scene in the book where it's kind of a pulled back moment where you get a view of both Becc and Keith's house and the fork in the path leading to the both of them, and it's just a very pastoral scene, and I'm trying to take advantage of that to get a good idea of what the color palettes for this are going to look like, what a lot of the shapes are going to feel like. There's a lot going on in this scene that can inform how the rest of the design of the book develops. The architecture, the clouds, the sea in the background. Whether or not I stick with like this kind of painterly color invasion, or if I just kind of flatten everything out and go graphic with it, I don't really know. I'm exploring, and so this was a good way to do that without getting necessarily hung up on like character design, because that's a whole other battle, and maybe we'll get to that a bit today, but I don't know. We'll see.
I want to see these kids, and we're going to talk about it. So anyone tuning in, we're actually chatting children's books today. So if you have any questions of our children's books and how they came to be, they will be colored. They will be short. They will follow 2 kids and then the friends that they make along the way. So if you have any questions about the children's book, how it came to be, feel free to ask. I love that it's colored. I'm irritated that you're able to do this. I'm not irritated. I'm actually should be really happy that you're able to do this so quick.
Yet you're irritated.
No, I'm not irritated. I change it. I'm happy. We're going to talk about this in just... No.
We're going to come back to this, yeah?
Yeah, I want to come back
questions.
to this. I want to ask you. You get a little bit. I want you to give your 5 minutes of fame here. Then we'll come back to the children's book.
Sure.
You finished the rough draft of the novel, Matt. How you feel?
Yes. Feeling great, but also like there's still so much work cut out for me. And the hardest parts of this whole process are still ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, because this book, not a standalone.
Not a standalone, right? There probably will be 2 more, but we'll see how that goes. You never really know a story until you're knee deep in the thick of it, and then you always see more stories that you could tell. You're always cutting things out that you'll visualize to tell like a very neat story. So there's a lot more, but editing is the part that I'm in right now, and it's tough. It's like putting things down that are going to stay. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, this is a kind of a question. This is a statement, right? As people, what we want to do these for is for everyone that's like thought of being creative or has questions of what we're creating. It's like this, we don't have all this stuff planned out. We are building the plane as we go. Winging. Kind of a good pun there. And it's like, it's not going to be perfect. Like if Matt and I used to work for a guy that said, like, if you're driving from Michigan to Florida and you're waiting for every light to turn green before you leave your driveway, you're never going to leave. It's like knowing where you want to go and working towards it. And it's like, we're able to make adjustments. It's like knowing your gift, knowing what you have to teach, and then seeing what the story's going to unfold as you go through. And it's challenging sometimes. Evan doesn't know if this is what it's even going to look like in our children's book. This could all be a waste of time. Which
it's not really a waste. Yeah, even if it is.
My dad is talking to you, Evan. He says, "Get used to it. Dillon's never happy. Love you, Dad. Thanks for being here." Matt, like, what is the process of getting your book ripped up by an editor? No, shout out Lindsay, incredible editor, not ripping it up, but does have thoughts, right? And there are changes. Like, talk to us about what it's like going through that.
Yeah, speaking to anybody who wants to create a long-term artistic project, the editing process, the way that I've experienced it is an editor is hired to go through a work and tell you your areas of opportunity. They're not hired to praise you. And so my experience for like the last couple months has been every morning when I log onto my computer, I see anywhere between, at the early stages, there was like 90. It was more than that. I think there was 86 suggestions in the first chapter before I just told Lindsay, like, hey, you can just make some changes. Like, I trust you. All her suggestions were on point. They were really good. It's like, when you see an opportunity, just go ahead and do it. Because I was so intimidated by that at the beginning, thinking when I finish this rough draft, 86 alterations in the first chapter alone. And then when she started making her own suggestions, or executing them, then in chapter 2, it was still like every chapter, there's probably 5 or 10 different things that she would comment on, and not like, I love this. This is great. This really works. I like this, but like, this is what's not working. I'm confused by this. And for the first couple of days of getting those edits, I was just like sweaty for the first couple hours of my day, not loving it. And then eventually got to a point where I was embracing the fact that, all right, like, this is going to, I love Lindsay and her suggestions were awesome. This is going to be a whole nother project. That's when my expectations to Dillon went from, yeah, we're going to get this thing done by April. And Lindsay's going to come through it. She's going to love it. She's going to change like 2 things, and we're going to be published by now. And then seeing all the suggestions, and there's actually a second editor going through it too, a third if you add Dillon, and some of your suggestions to this. And they're all looking at different things. Like Lindsay is looking at grammar and the overall structure of the story and what's working for the character arc. Cuthbert is looking at my work and comparing it to like masters like Brandon Sanderson and being like, trying to comment on the lore and the magic system and how thorough it is, and how asking questions like, do callings sleep? And then
yes, I thought of that. Yes.
Yeah, and all sorts of questions like that you would never encounter until you're like knee deep into the story and thinking for the first time, wait a second, is there any plot holes here? Is calling asleep? Is it awake? Does it eat? Does it, do all these different things? Now, we've hashed most of this stuff out, but it's just, it's more things to consider. When you get a story like Mistborn or the Stormlight Archive, and you receive, these are Brandon Sanderson's works, like you receive a world that is so thorough and thought out, and the science is fleshed out, the magic system feels very complete. It's like reading any one of your like school science books. Like all of this stuff is there, and here's the whole system. That's not how it works when you're writing your own story. You're like discovering it as you go. So it's been discovered, and it's thorough now that we've got a rough draft. But now it's like combing through the entire story and bringing it all up to this fully known standard, so that it can feel to the reader not like it's being discovered by the author as he's writing, or he in this case, but like from the beginning, you're in a world with a total set of rules, and they're all reflected in every scene in a very holistic way. It's tough, but I appreciate all the edits. I mean, it's so necessary.
And I think with that too, I'll speak very frank that this is why I love doing this collaboratively, or I love doing these and have people like encouraging y'all to ask us questions. I don't want to take questions as like someone's challenging me on my world, right? I remember I put information out on TikTok, and there was someone that commented, they're like, what would your world look like on a globe? Because you're showing me a map. And what he or she sees is my answer of like, there's actually more that hasn't been discovered, and we're still early. We're just seeing the first continent, and some people haven't traveled outside of this continent. So he sees or she sees a intellectual answer. When I first read it, my immediate response was like, I don't know, right? Like I never thought of that.
Yeah.
But it gives me time to actually chew and think and be like, well, I think it'd be this. I think like just hearing that, it's like, I love that someone asks, do callings sleep? It's not a bad question. It's just like it registers, and I go, you know what? They do. And then it's like the more questions people ask and the more ways we can answer, the more we get confident of what we're creating as well. That's why y'all do so much to help us as you're in here asking questions, which segue, if you're cool, Matt, I want to segue now to children's book, talking about Becc and Keith.
Please.
First question, great question. Someone compete with this guy when it comes to questions. Casey asks, I've noticed Keith is the name of Dillon's kid, and Keith with a C is the name of the kid in the book. Any plans for a Casey, or should I quit? Great question. No plans yet for a Casey, but there could be. It's actually going to be when we run our next Kickstarter. You will have the opportunity. There is going to be a tier, just like we've had create your own calling tier. We're going to have a create your own adventure tier. And Becc and Keith are going to meet other kids throughout their adventures. And we're going to be able to learn new things with kids. Becc and Keith are going to intermingle with them. But Casey, for instance, with a K, might teach something to Becc and Keith. If you'd like that, feel free to tune in for our next Kickstarter, because we're going to have limited space. I'm thinking 3 to 5 people, probably more towards the 3 of people that can make their own adventure and create their young kid character in this world. Can we see Keith? Answer. And real quick, Casey, take notes on how he spells that. Right now, no, we can't, because we're going to watch Evan draw. Unless Evan's got a... Do you have a picture on you right now of Keith?
Are you talking about the real Keith or the Keith with a C?
I mean, if you had a picture of the real Keith, that'd be weird.
Yeah. I want to see the real Keith and the illustrated Keith.
I mean, I'm sure they're around here somewhere, but I have nothing ordered.
We're losing Evan already. Goodness gracious. Is it just me that lost him, or did you lose him too, Matt?
I had him. I lost him now, but he's a little frozen at the moment.
Realized on this machine.
There we go. Now he's
Right,
back.
can you hear me?
There's
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that went pretty easily, actually.
And then let's see
There
if
you
I
go.
can find a picture of Keith.
Viking.
That's Keith the Viking. Keith the Curious. Man, I don't have any. I don't post a lot of him on social. All right, so I'll just show you here. That's Keith in real life.
It's uncanny. I see the resemblance.
It's
Great
crazy
job.
because what you can't see in my picture is like right here. He's holding a small owl, which would really blow you guys. Yeah, Keith in that picture. I'm just kidding.
Does he already have a ponytail mullet too? He's wearing a hat in that photo.
Big reader. NDA is locked in place. But this is how. So I'd love to talk about how these books came to be, because Keith and Becc are young kids in early Bostunia, after our origin novel, but well before modern day Bostunia. And they live in a tribe, which, Matt, I'd like to try to figure this out today. Would this still be Body tribe, or would it be like a different type of tribe?
Yeah.
They live in a tribe that is northeast Bostunia, kind of where the No Beast territory is today. And it's like a Viking-esque tribe. You know, people in this area, they have callings, and these are two young kids that get into a bunch of crazy adventures in reality and also in their minds. So Evan had a really good take on this, where it's going to be a Calvin and Hobbes feel, where what we see, these young kids and their little pets, is going to be much different than what they see. These brave warriors and their strong callings that are really, first swear word, badass. How this came to be, though, was we have been shining our light, telling our story, talking about Bostunia. It encompasses everything I do. If you're following our newsletter, I can't go to a concert without thinking of the different paths people would take. I call it my Bostunia brain. So I talk about it all the time. And I'm playing golf one day, and I had a buddy reach out to me. Kristen, if you're here, we love you. I'm talking about your husband. I had a buddy reach out to me who, strong defender, in my opinion. Like what I know him, like hard, like loyal, value-driven man. Doesn't have a Facebook, works hard, wants to provide for his family, has a young kid similar age as Keith, and like kind of sticks to his routines, loves that. And I would be the last person I would think. He reaches out to me as I'm golfing. He goes, "Hey man, I had this idea." He's like, "We're working on my son, Beckett, standing. And anytime I try to put him on his 2 feet, I talk to him and I say, hey, you're Becc. Oh, hey, Kristen. It's Becc the Brave, Beckett the Brave and Fearless or something like that." And he goes, I treat him like this warrior to talk to like my kid. And he's like, I thought it would be really cool to maybe come up with a name and think of one for Keith. And he's like, maybe we could talk to your illustrator and see what we could create. And I read this and I'm like, first off, never thought I'd hear that from him. So if it was Kristen that put it in his mind, thank you, Kristen. Second off, I'm like, this is exactly what we want to do. That's why we want to call it Imagination Incubator. That completely started in Tyler and Kristen's mind. And it led to what we're creating right now, because I go, yeah, we don't have a children's book yet. We could definitely put this in there. Like we have the frameworks and the systems for it. And one thing led to another. We worked on pictures. We sent pictures of their kid and my kid to Evan, and he created that Keith and Becc. Change their names slightly, make them a little bit Celtic, and it's led to what we're doing today. So I really hope that takes for anyone listening. If you have an idea, I can't guarantee anything, but if you have an idea and you're like, could we make this work? Pretty much the answer is going to be yes. We just have to figure out how. And it's like the only thing that we ask is for flexibility and adaptability through the process. So yeah, that's kind of how we got here with Becc the Brave and Keith the Curious and the adventures of Becc and Keith. This that we're seeing right now is the small village that Becc and Keith live in. I've talked a lot now. So, Matt, I'm going to pass it over to you. Do you have questions? You said you had some questions.
Yeah, I do.
Thank God.
So,
I feel like I've been talking.
yeah. What do you feel like the age range is for a book like this?
Age range of readers?
Yeah, the target. Who's going to enjoy this the most?
Yeah, I see this being for like young kids, anywhere from 1 to kindergarten. And it's going to mostly be their parents reading to them. They could eventually read it to themselves, but I see this being just as much for the parents as it is for the kids. Really what I see is colors, fun callings, fun adventures of these kids. And I'd love to teach lessons that go from young kids all the way up. But I do see it as a book that parents read to their kids. And each of the pages are going to be a few sentences in length.
Awesome. Okay. Did you read Calvin and Hobbes books when you were a kid?
Comics?
I sure did.
I didn't. Comics, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, would you call them comics?
Strips? Would they be strips?
Comic strips.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The funnies.
I had the separate books too.
I honestly, what I remember of Calvin and Hobbes is a lot of times it's just pictures, like people
bumper stickers.
Yeah, people post pictures of both of them. But I know it's one of the things that, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt or Evan. Which one's Hobbes? The tiger?
The tiger.
And the tiger is like a stuffed animal, like when the parents come in. And then when the parents leave, it's this full-on tiger that's walking with Calvin, and they're talking about stories of the universe pretty much.
Yeah, they philosophize a lot.
Yeah.
Hobbes is a philosopher, right? I think that's where that name comes from.
Calvin.
Oh, really? Calvin.
Scientist, philosopher.
Okay.
I don't see the kids. Maybe I could be wrong, but I know how the first book is set up, it's more of like a narrator telling their story and what they're doing rather than them speaking. So I see it more being like a silent story with narration. I'm open to change that, but that's how it's come out so far. The first book's done. We won't tell you the lesson or the story behind it, but the first book's done, and then we intend to do more throughout the years.
The what year do you think this happens in the studio?
Dude, I really appreciate you asking this question because it's one that I'm like, I don't know. Like, if we think of the time periods, right? We have the time of origin, the time of order, the time of the crumble, and the time of the fall. Those are kind of the eras. If I were to think of those eras, I'd probably see this more towards the end of origin, the beginning of order.
Okay.
So with that said, do you see that then with what you're creating in the origin novel? Can I ask a question back?
Yeah.
Would you think it would be more tribes and what tribes were called? Modern era, it's builders, explorers, defenders.
Yeah.
In the origin, it was the body tribe, the mind tribe, and the heart tribe.
Right.
Do you think it would be more old or more new?
Yeah, if you're talking, and I've always, I'm not sure if we call it discover or if we call it origin, the first era. Either way, but anyhow, it's like year 0 to about year, I think we said 80, and then order happens from about 80 to 180. Crumble, what were we at, 295 right now? We could pull up our document and honestly fact check this, but so I would put it somewhere around 80, 90, 100, maybe early order. At that time, I think you still have tribes. You're not quite in like the organization of people being so connected with their calling that they sort of identify themselves by the shape and size and feel of their spirit companion. That comes later. So we're bridging into that next,
which I could. Tribes. Now that we ask these questions, this is what's fun for me in the creative process is like, man, that could be, we could find lessons in that as we make that shift. But you're saying it's going to be more of the tribes of body, heart, and mind. We're probably not going to touch on it. Like, we won't talk as much lore in these books, but it'd be cool to always know. And I'd be curious, the more that we write, the more if we see this tribe as a body tribe or a heart tribe. I know they're not the Sophistра, from what we've seen.
Yeah.
I lean towards body. I get like a fun How to Train Your Dragon feel with Miyazaki tinges. That's what Casey says. Evan, who is that? And don't
Miyazaki. Miyazaki is the animator behind Studio Ghibli, primarily.
It's embarrassing for me not to know that.
Yeah, very.
Well, honestly, people hate me for it.
Yep.
Not a huge Ghibli guy. I highly respect them and what they do, and I love the score, and I love the animation. Very hard for me to follow a storyline, but it's like that's the tropes that they break, and power to them for doing it and what they've created. It's just, as someone that loves story structure, it's very difficult to be like, where am I right now? Like, it's hard to find my ground when I'm watching any of those movies. Go ahead, Evan. Counterpoint.
No, not going to get into it. I'll just get mad.
Okay, high level.
Do it then.
I spend enough of my time arguing on online these days.
We know that's what we love you for, so we come to love you for. Any other questions there, Matt, before I have a couple of questions with Evan?
Yeah, I mean, whether or not it's body tribe or heart tribe, or they have builders or explorers or defender beasts, both of those are more man-made constructs, like to understand themselves. So we could apply, we could categorize them however we want. How would you classify Keith's beast and Beck's beast?
Actually going to take from the Pandit family somewhat here. What I told, so each of these kids are going to have their own pets. We're going to see them in two scenes. We're going to see them as pets, or as you would see Hobbs as a stuffed animal, but they're just going to be small pets. And then we're going to see them in these immaculate, their most mature selves, because that's what they are like in Keith and Beck's minds. They take shape from the feng shui beasts. There's 4 spirit beasts. There's the tortoise, the tiger, the dragon, and the phoenix. Keith's beast will be a small bird. It's going to be very kooky. I see it very kooky as it's young, as a pet. In Keith's minds, it's this immaculate phoenix with, wait for it, Evan loves this, peacock feathers. Evan loves drawing peacock feathers, so we're going to add that in because we want a way for these beasts to like transport these kids places, right? So one of them has the power of flight, can travel certain places. The other one, being a Beck's beast, will be a little kitten, but in its mind, this giant tiger with the ability to swim. So I think Tyler, Kristen's husband, and myself, Tyler created this tiger to have 2 or 3 tails that have like oar paddles at the end, so it can kind of like swim or take them through water. So we have flight and water through these callings. Giant tiger, giant phoenix. Giant water tiger, giant peacock phoenix.
Circling back to the Pandit families, I think we can develop that idea, ground that idea a little bit for people who are watching. What does that mean? And how there's 4 of them? I heard you say that. How does these Pandit family ideas show up in Bastunia?
Yeah, so Argus, being the savior of this world, really, through discovery, brings connection between all these tribes, so they can live harmoniously together and not have this separation, to be ready to take on this almighty cosmic threat of these Azigra, right? As Argus gets close to the end of his life, he wants order to maintain when he's gone. So I believe what we last had, Matt, is he has kids, 4 kids. Each of them take on a different spirit beast that stay with them. So Argus communicates with the great god of the world, Buntu, in his cosmic badass form. And Buntu creates these 4 beasts to give to these kids. Tortoise of earth is what we decided. Dragon of water, tiger of wind, and phoenix of fire. And these callings are the biggest, I know, second swear jar, I apologize. These callings are like the biggest BAs of the world to really maintain order. And these 4 kids and the families around them that are there to teach them, very similar to how a family would teach like the next Dalai Lama, the way of being a Lama. They go to different parts of the world and they create balance in the world. And that's where we see a lot of these, or 4 of the temples, the air temple, the fire temple, the water temple, and the earth temple. The leader of that temple, if you will, or what we call the Eldwiser of that temple, is one that always has this beast. They're the only 4 beasts that when their human passes on, they don't. They wander Bastunia waiting for the next Eldwiser to be born. And the way we know the next Eldwiser is born is because these beasts find their way to him. So there's the Eldwiser, and then there's a few families around these Eldwisers that teach them the ways of the world and really raise them the right way so they can wear that crown correctly in the world.
Yeah. I do see this story taking place in the world of like the first Pandit families. It's still Argus's children that are maintaining order. I think we'd have to look at this. It's not super important for this conversation to know the exact year, but I think it's somewhere around like year 80 where Argus's life will end and we'll transition to that. So we could put this like 85, year 90.
Yeah, I really like that. Any other question? I think real quick, I'm going to come to Casey as a reader of children's books. It's at his level as why he does it. He thinks it's super important to not beat the readers or kids over the head with the lesson. I think that's going to be a big one for me to learn through the process because I always love to teach. I'm curious how the first one comes out if you feel it does that. And if you do, let us know. We will take feedback. We will get better with it. But we do want the lessons of these books to be different than what we're typically seeing for like children's books, where it's like tie your shoes or do this or don't hit people. We want to teach.
Keith is not of reading age yet, is he?
No. We talked about like the ideas of like self-confidence at a young age, like doing things that you love to do, self-sufficiency, resilience. So I don't think it's going to come across where we're kind of beating it over the kid's head because it is going to be a little bit broader or larger of a lesson. But I'm excited to see how it turns out and what you think of it. Thank you, Casey.
It's funny you bring up Calvin and Hobbes and compare this to that because I haven't thought about Calvin and Hobbes in a long time, but that was like one of my favorite books to read as a kid.
Yeah.
What were, for both of you, Evan, Dillon, anybody who's listening and watching as well, what were your favorite children's books as a kid? What are your favorite children's books now as an adult too?
As in like picture books, like the book kind of books you would read at bedtime, or like Harry Potter children's books.
This age range. So probably under. Let's think under 10.
I mean, I could tell you now that list is very much colored by what my daughter is reading and loves to read, and what I love to read to her. And one of my favorites these days is called Room for Everyone. Doesn't really have much of a lesson per se, but the art and writing is fantastic, and it's really just about a bus ride from Zanzibar to the beach. Yeah, and it's a really fun book. But like, if I try to be loftier about it and think about what books have the strongest lessons or left those kinds of narrative impressions on me growing up, I mean, The Velveteen Rabbit was one from the old days. I really liked the Redwall picture books illustrated by Christopher Denise. Yeah,
Redwall,
I don't know. I'd
Redwall
have to
got
I'd
like
have to think about it.
novels. Redwall's
Yeah,
got
yeah, it
novels
did.
too, right?
It did, but there were also 2 picture books, The Great Redwall Feast and A Redwall Winter's Tale, which are fantastic, and I love to read to my daughter. And then they're just gorgeously illustrated. They're amazing.
I'd love maybe send that to me because I'd love to look it up. I remember getting Redwall novels when I was in elementary school. Never read one of them, but I would buy them at Scholastic Fair just because I loved
Dude.
them. I know. I tried to read one. I think I was just so young. I'm like, I don't know if I get this.
These are the ones with the anthropomorphized mice, right? Am I thinking the same thing?
Rodents.
Yeah,
Like, there was
all kinds of woodland creatures.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my grandparents reading Looney Tunes to me a lot, like actual Looney Tunes, like mini books. Like I remember they were like novels. So I was like, they're old. But I just remember, I just like getting lost in like the crazy things that they would do. And maybe I wasn't looking for any lessons, but it was just, I remember there was one, like I started writing this short story thinking Looney Tunes. And I was like, I think I had Keith like walking off a cliff almost on accident and Becc having to save him. And I'm like, I just don't know if modern society, if this would be the best thing to put in a children's book. So we changed it. But it is crazy because that's like what I remember when I was a kid.
Well, Looney Tunes, you get away with some very interesting logic. I love the old like Looney Tunes logic. What's that?
Toon Force is like the greatest superpower still made to this day in all of like comics that I read. I know it's like the power Luffy has in One Piece, and it's an unbreakable force. You have when you ever see Space Jam, where like Michael Jordan's like stretching his arm to dunk a basketball from half court, which that should be worth 3 points, right? Because his feet were behind the line of the 3-point line. Doesn't matter if he dunks it.
It's a great point.
Yeah. Anyway.
Great point.
Thanks. Any other questions? And I got a question for Evan. You have any other questions for me, man? We got 10 more minutes.
Casey recommended a couple of books.
Little Bot and Sparrow.
You can ask your questions. I'll keep thinking.
Oh, Jake Parker.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up. Little Bot and Sparrow. Evan, when I kind of tell you, when I remember when I was first telling you, hey, this is what we're thinking, right? And you start creating these characters and you start creating this awesome scenery that they're going to live in. Thank you so much for drawing this. Can we zoom in at all? Is it possible to zoom in more?
You're not going to like it if I do, but yeah.
I do. Oh, you're not going to like it. I love it. No, zoom out a little bit more.
Listen, well, it's obviously not done. I'm not loving it, but I think it's a good jumping off point to keep discovering.
If you're watching this and you also don't love it, make sure to put it in the chat so Evan can know. What did you start thinking of, like elements wise, inspiration wise, like picture wise? Like, do you when I started explaining this to you, Evan, are you thinking like, are you being like, oh, it's kind of like this book, or oh, it's kind of like this movie, or oh, it's kind of like this art concept? Because this is a little different than the comics.
It's very different than the comics. I mean, this particular scene grabbed me because I really wanted to do something pastoral with, like sheep popping out of tall grass, or goats as you wrote them. Actually, these are sheep. I need to change that. But where was I going with that? I lost it completely. I wanted to do that, and so that's kind of what I chose as a point from which to explore some of the colors and how I handle, again, like I've mentioned, color invasion or super graphic color or whatever. But yeah, I really just wanted to make a scene that kind of pulls you in, that has some like visual flow to some important areas, that kind of explored, the shape language of clouds, which might be a big landscape feature in this, or how things like rocks and hills sort of interact with each other, given that it's kind of a Viking village, at least as I imagine it. I don't know what's going on back there, but it's not right. Things like that. And definitely the opportunity to explore Becc and Keith's house, I think that they in particular could do with a lot more character. I think that in looking at them, you should be able to tell if you know the characters, which is Beck's and which is Keith's, and right now I don't.
I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, by which I mean, Keith's house should probably, I don't know, maybe it's going to have like the owl whiskers.
Rookery.
Yeah, or an actual rookery. Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a fantastic idea. And Beck's maybe is, whereas Keith's is maybe tall, maybe Beck's is more squat, lower to the ground, since he as a character is shorter. Maybe it has like tiger stripes as part of its some of the drapery that's hanging over the roof, or I don't know, whatever. There need to be cues that are designed into that, but that would be the next step of this. Like, this is pure exploration, and then it's getting into the weeds and figuring out the details. But as this is not going to be an animated film, there's really only so far that needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's a children's book, I think I think it does deserve probably a more graphic treatment of color. So probably the clouds would be pretty much all white or close to it. I mean, there might be a slight gradation across them, but not what you had seen here previously.
And the reason for that being what, when you think of it? And also, Kristen, if you're here, any questions, any thoughts, any thought-provoking things for Evan to be able to take and be like, ooh, or like, hey, and when I think of Becc and where he lives, it would be more like this, or have we thought of this? We'd love it. You will not be as hard on Evan as he is on himself. Go ahead, Evan. Why do you think it should be all white for the clouds? I love you.
Yeah, definitely open to any feedback, truly. But it's not that I think the clouds necessarily need to be all white. I think that they need to read graphically. Right now, the way they read is really tied to these shifts in value between very light and very dark shapes, these abstract shapes in the cloud. They do a lot for the composition, for the flow, and for the understanding you have of the clouds, the visual understanding that you walk away with, as opposed to in the comic, where I wouldn't bother with any of that. I would have just I would have done a couple of these, and they would have been just graphic background elements, and that's probably more of what these children's books are going to need. Not entirely. There will be color, of course. There will be texture. There will be opportunities for painterly touches, but contrast is more about focus and drawing that focus. And like, can you see these houses? Is your eye drawn to them appropriately? Is the order in which your eye is drawn to them, does it feel appropriate for the image? Or is there a first, second, and third read that makes sense? That to me is what contrast is about. That's all about hierarchy, and contrast is king when it comes to hierarchy.
That's what Kristen was saying. It's like a big thing she's seen with like little kids' books is high contrast to keep young kids interested, focused on the pictures, because they're not going to understand the words or the content yet. It's like, how do we keep them focused on these pictures?
They also love hidden element, not necessarily hidden, but they love like not subliminal either, subjected elements. So like if one of these sheep had like a was chewing on a flower or something, or if there was a bird, a bird's nest, like here in the shadow of the rock, the kind of thing that invites that kind of visual discovery for a kid to look for as you're reading. That's the kind of stuff that really goes a long way with them, like a pie on the windowsill.
And it's almost like anytime you read it again, you see something that you maybe didn't see the first time.
Yeah. So in a perfect world with all the time in the world, that's what goes into composing an image for a children's book.
With something like this, and then I have last questions that I'll have because we're going to wrap up here. If anyone else has any questions as you think of this world, think of the books, please ask. What comes next for you, Evan, in like a creative process? It's like, hey, I want to understand this landscape more and where they're living more, or is it, all right, we're good here, let's fit the kids into it, and then we'll grow both? Does that make sense? Like, what do you feel next after starting something like this?
Probably characters. I mean, a lot of this was actually me wanting to get an idea of like what kind of language we're speaking, what kind of visual language we're going to be speaking in this book. And that can be done with characters, but honestly, characters can be distracting in trying to fight that battle because there's so much going on with characters, and they have such a charged emotional like weight to them that a landscape doesn't necessarily. It kind of frees you up to explore, does this design work from a design perspective without thinking about, oh, this is Keith and this is Becc and this is what they're going to do and these are their personalities and this is what they're going to bring to the story. All of that is important. I just feel like stripping that away can be a helpful exercise, and so that was the goal here. So I mean, I am realistically going to move to characters. I want to see Becc and Keith with their beasts. Their original designs, there are probably things that I would change about them. There are definitely things that I would change about them. And, I'd want to nail that down.
And when we get Becc and Keith is when we get Becc and Keith. My question was going to be, and then we'll go these last two, but my last question was, when you think of, because how we'd like to set this up is like, there's the story of Becc and Keith in their mind.
Yeah.
These brave warriors. And there's the story of Becc and Keith in reality. These toddlers that are, I mean, Keith's still crawling in the first book, right?
Right.
In case we were wondering, Keith pumped right now. That's my wife. Hey, Morgan. So obviously we know what they're going to look like in reality. I think that's kind of the pictures we're seeing, that what you've done right now. When you see them like in their mind, these brave warriors, do you see them as like 10-year-olds brave warriors? Do you see them as like adults in their mind? Like, what do you first see? I can always give my thoughts, but I'm curious for you, Evan, when you're thinking of this creatively in your mind, what kind of age range are you seeing them what age range do you see them as seeing themselves in their mind? Jesus, that's a
tough question. Makes sense.
I think they're going to see themselves the way they see themselves, which is like nobody at the age of 3 imagines themselves as a 35-year-old. They're gonna see themselves the way that they see themselves now. So I mean they're not gonna like. I don't think they're gonna suddenly look like He-Man. In their imagination, it's going to be more like Rugrats, where all of a sudden Phil and Lil are in a detective outfit wearing a monocle, but they still look like Phil and Lil wearing diapers. So it's probably going to be that.
Love it.
More
and it's
than
like
anything.
Keith would probably see himself standing. I'm sure that would be the difference, right? In his mind, if he's a crawler. Yeah, I was interested with that. I agree. There's nothing in my mind that changes there. So, Matt, you want to ask this question? I was like reading it. I'm like, how about you?
Yeah. I think Evan will make sense. You had mentioned earlier that as you're drawing, you're kind of in a state of exploration, searching for the things that just feel right. And my question is, do you actively, when you're drawing, toggle between this exploration and definition? Or do you find that there's like an exploration phase of drawing, and then there's a definition phase where these things are very distinct?
That's really a matter of the goal of a piece or the project. If it's a personal piece, it could go any number of ways. However the wind is blowing is how I'm probably going to paint it. But if it's a professional piece, then it's really about solving the problems that need to be solved. So even if I really don't feel like getting in here and figuring out what the heck these are, I have to, because that's part of the drawing or it's part of the design. Maybe I can fudge it enough so that there's enough indication that you feel like there's some structure there. We don't really need to know more than that. That's fine. But to some degree, like we need to figure out what is going on here and why. That's all. And that really depends on the goal of the piece, the goal of the session, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, my favorite question, because we only have 50 more seconds. Evan, someone wants to know ETA.
Yeah.
December.
No, I'm gonna go just because this is, and I'm laughing also at myself here, because I am impatient when it comes to a lot of these deadlines. I am gonna start to say just later this year. I think we came into the year like, oh, we're gonna do this, and then we can do this and this. It'll be later this year when we know it's coming. Like have a more definitive date. We'll definitely let people know. So continue to tune in, continue to ask the question. We will continue to laugh at that one because it's something that we're all working through. Thank you for asking. I do think we could get to a point where we're going to start creating stickers. We're going to start creating patches. We're going to start creating bookmarks that we'll be selling on our website, and we'll be putting in Kickstarters and backer kit campaigns. I think maybe one of the first things that'll start to come, we're going to have pictures of Casey, we love you. We're going to have our first stickers are going to be of Ubuntu, of Matt's calling Chugach, and of Dillon's calling We'll eventually put more stickers out of characters, and I think we'll get in the next couple of months, potentially, not to put too much pressure here, we'll get some early drawings of Ceith, Becc, and their callings that we could put in like stickers so we can start to bring this to life slowly but surely. So we'll be teasing that out throughout the way. If you're a sticker fan, let us know. Maybe we can always think of an idea, but would go good for a sticker or a bookmark or a patch. And again, we just appreciate everybody for tuning in as we create these callings. Look at, he's even putting together a, is this Tiger? Is this Tiger and a young kid
playing it?
Come on, man. We love it.
I don't know.
We're going to continue to, I want to post.
I hate today.
We're going to post most of even these rough sketches on our Instagram. So make sure you're following our Instagram. Make sure you're following us on Facebook, YouTube. Check out our website. If you have not got a book, feel free to reach out to us. If you need book 1, book 2, book 3 is now available. We're shipping all those out thanks to Keith the Curious and Morgan the Matriarch. We will be sending these out. Like that. We'll be sending these out to you. That being said, though, we will see you all in 2 weeks unless there is another intergalactic war that we need to attend to, by which we will let you know. We appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Stay curious. What a horrible ending.